there a temptation to set up a CLS Beijing, a CLS India, as an interim step to helping them participate more fully?
Well, in China there is the CFETs. In India there is CCIL. In fact, CCIL submits today when the Indian banks are trading CLS currency. CCIL is the conduit to send those into CLS, so we settle those today. And then if we talk about trading against the local currency, there are local solutions today that do a great job for serving the need of the market today. That will change when the currency is internationalized, because if you think of a large bank around the world trading currency in multiple markets, they will look to international standards and international practices. They will want liquidity, efficiency, etc. So I think we will find that as and when these countries internationalize, they will look towards the international standard, which is CLS.
Right. In terms of education, what do you find yourself spending more time on, or a lot of time on right now?
Well, it depends who we're talking to. If we're talking about in some of the emerging markets, it's about why CLS was created in terms of the standards. It's things like why an RTGS system might be required, will be required, but potential changes to the law to give the finality of settlement. We're finding now that as we go to these countries, they've all heard about CLS, and then the discussion is in terms of a potential time frame. Do I want to internationalize? And if so, yes, I will use CLS as opposed to YCLS.
Just looking at some of the developments that has taken place around you. I mean, as I mentioned just now, that the joint venture between CME and Reuters for FX Marketplace, that sort of fell apart. Why do you think that happened, and what do you think are the needs of the forex market that still have to be met, whether they're met by you or by any other players right now?
Well, FX Marketplace was just an additional platform competing for business against additional platforms, and it failed to attract liquidity. It failed to attract the business. At the time, there wasn't seen to be a great need for clearing. Now that may have changed as a result of Lehman's, and which is the reason why we're looking again as to whether for certain market segments there is a need for clearing. If there is, CLS will be part of providing that. And
in terms of the kind of businesses that are coming through to you right now, in fact, volumes went up the roof, and then they're sort of settling in right now to.
No, volume's very high still.
It's still very high.
Yeah, very high.
What is the composition of the volume? What is the composition in terms of spots and forwards, and and what do you see happening in terms of a trend?
Yes. Well, by volume of tickets, the vast majority is the spot business.
Okay.
By value, the spot and the forward are more equally weighted. Because of the concern that banks have had in terms of trading with each other, the value of the forward trades has reduced in the last year, but the volume of tickets has gone through the roof. So we've seen a steady increase since 2008. 2009, and we're seeing that increase continue.
Right, and swaps have generally tapered off.
Swaps have tapered off a little because of concerns of banks in terms of whether they're willing to lend to each other.
But what we see is a tendency of central banks to sort of take on swap agreements with each other. Now, do you see something happening on that front at the point at which they are utilized, at least?
Yes, and we also see increasingly interest of the central banks in using CLS as the conduit for that. One of the big achievements of last year was for the Reserve Bank of New Zealand to become our first central bank direct member, and they could see the advantages to them of using CLS. And there's an issue if institutions, including central banks, are intervening in the foreign exchange market, and they don't use CLS, there's going to be a liquidity displacement. And there's efficiencies of having the liquidity in one pot.
Right.
So we're hoping that other central banks will become direct users in the years to come.
Do you give a discount to central banks to participate?
They come in on a different basis, and they don't have to become shareholders. Well, they can't become shareholders because they wouldn't want that. So they come in on a special basis. But equally, that's fair because their volume is very small.
Is there a difference in the conversations that you're having with the different central bankers? Some central banks emphasizing different, points of their relationship with you from others?
No, they all are united in understanding the benefit of an industry solution to take out settlement risk. They've all been united in supporting us in terms of the aggregation business. I think they may have different perspectives in terms of the need for clearing. We haven't yet had that discussion. We've also, CLS provides settlement services and other instruments. So credit default swaps is an example where we provide a service for DTC. And there it's true to say that the central banks have had differences of view. For example, if you're in Asia, you might worry about the fact that we're settling credit default swaps at the end of the Asian day. So there's a particular sensitivity there. So different central banks have different perspectives beyond the FX business, but on FX they're very, very similar.
Right. But in terms of the Federal Reserve Bank, what percentage of your volume is US dollar as opposed to any other currency?
Against the dollar, it's more than half, because most currencies, the dollar is the counter currency to most of the trading. The big two currencies are the dollar and the euro.
The final question I want to ask you is, given the fact that there is a lot of talk about an alternative currency, to the US dollar being a global trading currency, do you see the possibility of trading blocks requiring CLS to provide a regional version, especially in Asia where intra-Asian trade has been on the increase, for example?
Well, our strategy has been to include coverage of the currencies that are major international trading currencies. So I think we have 6 currencies in this part of...
So you're agnostic about currency to currency, but are there elements that will force you to have regional strategies? Time zones would be one of them, I would imagine.
We could, as we expand our service range, we could have additional sessions to accommodate the needs of local market. And the best example of that is where we're looking to have a later session to deal with same-day US-Canada. Because that's a market that everything is settled the same day. We finish our business by 12 o'clock Central European time, which is 7 o'clock in the morning US time, and that's before trading has started. So by definition we miss out on those trades. So we're now currently very seriously looking at extending our day to include the same day business. So conceptually we could also look to have earlier sessions in Asia Pacific to meet with the needs of the local market, so there's more settled in the normal banking day.
Right. Now that the global economic crisis seems to be stabilizing, what are some of the priorities that you're setting for yourself in terms of growing CLS further beyond the conversation we've had?
Okay. Well, the first priority is to increase the coverage of CLS from the 75% to the 100%. The second priority is to get aggregation in this year. Third priority is to work with the industry in terms of the need for an information repository. The fourth will be to respond to the needs of the market for a clearing service, should that be required. And then alongside that, and that's all to do with our core business of foreign exchange, and alongside that, if we can add additional value to the industry by settling other instruments in a way that the market's comfortable with, the regulatory community is comfortable with, we'll do that as well. We do credit default swaps today, and potentially we could do other instruments.
Rob Close, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I hope we will continue this conversation at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.